Hey everybody, welcome back. It's the Rasball Fantasy Baseball Podcast. I am Beaton, joined by the fantasy master Lothario himself, Gray Albright. How you doing over there, Gray?
Good, man. Just back from New York. I was there for Tat Wars, NL only, 12 team, but really, there's only one team, right? Gray Albright's team. What? That would actually be a fun league to be in, a one-team league.
A one-team league,
Like,
just whatever
but
happens.
a one-team league, but multiple personality. One team league, but the guy has multiple. Okay, anyway. Yeah, I'm back from New York. I'm on 4 hour sleep. Let's do this.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't looked at your team actually yet, but I'm just guessing you spent a lot on hitting, some on pitching because you have to, basically, and that's how the team came out.
Yeah. Yeah, no, totally. I like my team. I'll do a write up this week, and actually, by the time people are listening to this, there already might be a write up on the site. So yeah, I like the team. A lot of hitting, and pretty iffy on the pitching.
And some arms just to fill out a roster. Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's talk pitching.
Let's talk some back end pitchers here. At number 41 is Jeffrey Springs. Last year he went 9-5. He had a 2.46 ERA, a 107 WHIP, 144 strikeouts, and 135 innings. Young projected for a 10-6 record, 3.08 ERA, 105 WHIP, 166 strikeouts, and 153 innings. He had 25 starts. He really hasn't been a starter since 2017. Seeing a bit of a late breakout after he got to Tampa Bay, and they taught him the magical changeup that they teach everybody.
Yeah, no, completely. I just want to say too on the in the big picture here, we have we're 40 picks in to whatchamacallit, to the pitchers, obviously. Welcome to the podcast, Craig. But I just want to say that, like, in the big picture, you see, like, if you remember back to like our outfielder podcast when we went from 50 to 100, it was already bad. It was already like I
like,
don't
these
know.
are 5, 6, 7 outfielders for your teams at that point.
Yeah, yeah. It was like, it's like, good luck. I don't know. Mike Yastrzemski might be good.
Hope you grabbed outfielders early.
Mike Yastrzemski might get at bats, but now you look at like the pitching and you're like, these guys are great. There's so many good pitchers still. It's so crazy that like people are still they look at like the pitching and they're like, oh, you got to get your pitching early, otherwise, you're not gonna have any pitching. And then you look at the actual pitchers that are going this late in drafts, and you're like, well, I mean, this guy's really good. The next guy's great. The guy after that's really good. The guy after that's really good. Like, you could probably make up a pitching staff for a 12-team mixed league at least. You could probably make up a pitching staff of just the tier of players that we're talking about today. I mean, it's possible, right?
Yeah, I think it is. Actually, we just had the Wharf draft, which is the Waffle House area, whatever draft. And I essentially kind of did that. I waited and waited and waited on pitching as I tend to do.
For people
and that's
who
how it
aren't
came
familiar,
out.
for people who aren't familiar, like moi, how many teams is that?
It's a 15-team NFBC league. So two catchers, the kind of the standard 15-team league.
Right. Like the draft champions, basically.
Yeah, but my
not
first
not draft and hold though, right?
Right. No, not draft and hold.
It's fab.
Right.
Okay, yeah. I mean, in a league like that, a 15-team league, I mean, that's a little bit deep to be punting pitching completely, but you can see how you can get, like, we're only at like number 3 starters at this point. Like, if you're really like, if you're pushing it, they could be number 2s possibly, but I mean, they're not bad starters. Like, I wrote, like Jeffrey Springs, Is that who we're talking about, by the way?
It is.
Yeah, it's been so long. Jeffrey Springs, I wrote a sleeper post about him. Now, like you said, I mean, he was, he wasn't really that stretched out previous years. Last year, he had 135 and a third innings, which and great innings. I mean, he had a 2.46 ERA and a 9.6 K per nine in 135 innings. I mean, it's kind of like if you got that from DeGrom, you would be happy, right? I mean, honestly, like I know DeGrom's going to strike out more guys in theory if he were to actually get to 135 innings. Okay. But I mean, honestly, like Jeffrey Springs, I know he's not an ace. And I mean, I still think like I'm drafting him everywhere. I still think he's like a solid number two that is going as a number three, in my opinion. I mean, and also like Jeffrey Springs specifically, he just got a big contract from the Rays. The Rays don't pay anyone. They're going to have him. I mean, they may not throw him for 200 innings just because, I mean, that would be silly to do. But, I mean, they're going to throw him for 150 innings if assuming he's healthy, which there's no reason why he shouldn't be. He is just like, I mean, he's so solid that you look at him and you're like, how is this guy going at like, what's his ADP? Like 150? Like, like there's so much pitching here, man.
Yeah,
Right?
it's kind of crazy like where his ADP is versus the numbers that like he could potentially give you and wouldn't. I mean, we're not even talking about him, breaking out or adjusting, like just throwing a few more innings. And yeah, he's going at 161 right now. So just another reason to wait. I will say in that draft, I waited until the sixth round, which is later than I normally wait for pitching, but I just wanted to give it a try. My first five starters were Logan Gilbert, Logan Webb, Lance Lynn, Kodai Senga, and Jesus Luzardo. I mean, I'm perfectly fine. That's innings, that's strikeouts. I'm fine. Like it's perfectly okay. I thought a few other aces were going to drop, or guys I think will be potential aces would drop, but that's the risk you take if you wait that long.
I
But
know.
again,
Like
perfectly
honestly,
fine.
like if you were to sorry, not to interrupt you, but if you were to say like Garrett Cole were to give you a 9.6 K per nine and a 2.46 ERA, you'd be like, he's going in the top 20 overall. And that's what Jeffrey Springs just did. Like I mean, I get that Cole's going to throw more innings. I understand all that. But honestly, like you look at Springs' numbers from last year, and of course, ERA isn't necessarily a great predictor of future outcomes. But I mean, Springs is so good. It's not like his other peripherals aren't jumping off the page. Like he doesn't walk anyone. He strikes out guys. He's in a good park. I don't know, man. I mean, I really think like there's so much pitching. Anyway, sorry.
There is. Moving on to our next guy at 42 is Jesus Luzardo. Last year he went 4-7. He had a 3.32 ERA, a 104 WHIP, 120 strikeouts, and 100 innings. You have projected for an 8-9 record, 3.21 ERA, 106 WHIP, 164 strikeouts, and 142 innings. He had velocities up across the board in 2022. Leaned on the slider more, ditched the sinker, kind of ditched the change as well. And I mean, the results were phenomenal.
Yeah, I wrote a sleeper post on him too because again, like, and these guys, like, honestly, if we were to say like, am I going out on a limb with these guys as sleepers? No, I'm not. I'm not. Like these aren't risky picks. Like these are just guys that are going like 70 picks after they should be going. Like you look at Jesus Luzardo and you see his numbers, and once again, you look at like a 10.8 K per nine and a 3.32 ERA. I mean, he's an ace. He's an ace. He's an ace, bro. Like, I mean, again, I understand ERA isn't everything, but if you look at the rest of his numbers, it's like, what numbers do you want to look at to try and knock you off the page? Like, it's like his xFIP was great, his walks were solid, I mean, everything. Like you said, the velocity, the command's good, the velocity is good. Like, he's in a great park. He's got a good pitching staff, like his his coaches, like everyone, every Marlins starter's good all the time, always. Like, they're all good. Yet people are like, you know what? I'm gonna have to draft a starter in the top 20. Okay. Anyway, I like Jesus Luzardo as well.
I like him as well. Like I said, I waited until the 6th round to draft a pitcher. He's my SP5, Gray. I am so fine with that.
Right. SP5. SP5, bro. For the numbers I just rattled off. I mean, I just closed his player page, but what was it? 10 plus K per 9 and a barely 3 ERA last year? I mean, I get it. It doesn't mean he's going to be a barely 3 ERA this year, but come on, man. I mean, as a SP5?
What are we doing? Exactly.
What are we doing? Seriously. And you have people who are, honestly, I'm not saying they're dumb. I'm not out here saying they're dumb people. There's actually really smart people that are still like, you gotta hit, you gotta bang, you gotta double tap starters in rounds 2 and 3. Like, what? Dude, what? There's so many starters, man. Starters are not my problem. It's trying to find late hitting. That's my problem. Okay, anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, the discussion that I have with Rudy all the time, basically once a week, me and Rudy go through this discussion pretty much. Number 43 is actually my SP1 in that same league, Logan Gilbert, who went 13-6. He had a 3.20 ERA, 1.18 WHIP, 174 strikeouts, and 185 innings. You're projected for 9-10, 3.71 ERA, 1.16 WHIP, 177 strikeouts, and 102 innings. I will say, if you kind of looking at his stat page, 2021, he had like 3 bad starts that made the numbers look a lot worse. So really, I just pushed that aside a little bit. Struggled a little bit in August. Didn't throw the slider quite as much. So maybe a slight concern that there was an issue with his arm as the season wore on and he had the innings build up. But other than that, Logan Gilbert was great last year, and I just kind of expect it to continue.
Again, great park. Was great already last year. It was already great. Like, we're not telling you, like, we're not looking at guys who are like just appearing in the majors who had a 5 ERA, but we're like, oh, Herman Marquez can get better. You know, we're not like trying to reinvent the wheel here. Like, these pitchers were already good. They could potentially get better. They were already good.
Absolutely.
You know? Like, I don't know, man. Like, it's like Logan Gilbert's another guy. I mean, I love him too. Like, all these guys. Honestly, as I was writing in my rankings, we'll get to pitchers who I don't like in a little bit, but as I was writing my rankings, I really struggled to find bad starters. I struggled to find guys who I was like, I could, take a pass on him, because there's so many guys, and you only need like maybe 6 in most leagues, and that's like, that's an average ballpark. Like, in a deeper league, you might need 7 or 8 starters, but in a shallower league, you might only need like 4. So it's like 6 is a good ballpark for most leagues. But yeah, I mean, you don't need a lot of these guys. Like, you need to draft so many. You need to work on your hitting. Work on your hitting, man. I'm talking to you, guy who's right now, you in the Nissan Altima, who's driving on the 405. I'm talking to you, bro. Work on your hitting.
You're thinking about double tapping Corbin Burns, Garrett Cole at the turn.
Work on your hitting.
All right, number 44 here is Pablo Lopez. Last year he went 10-10, 3.75 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 174 strikeouts, and 180 innings. You have him projected for 11-9, a 3.24 ERA, a 1.14 WHIP, and 177 strikeouts and 174 innings. He struggled a little bit the second half, but kind of played with his pitch mix. But I mean, he's Pablo Lopez. He was still good. I mean, again, it goes to the depth of the position to say that Pablo Lopez is not ranked in the top 40 pitchers.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, exactly. Like if you were going, I am really I am beating this horse, man. PETA is going to knock down my door and be like, stop beating this dead horse. But if you look at like maybe 15 years ago when there was like so much hitting, or even, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago when there was so much hitting and you wanted to make the case for like you needed to get pitching early because there's just so much hitting and pitching, it gets scarce real fast. You could have made that case last decade. Can't make it right now unless the ball changes, and we don't know it's going to change. So I mean, that's just complete hypothetical that there's no basis in reality. If the ball is the same, which I'm assuming it's going to be, it's a dead ball, bro. It's a dead ball. Like every pitcher's good. Like if you look around the league, like Pablo Lopez had an off year last year and he still had a 3.75 ERA. Like, I mean, how good do you need your pitching to be? It's like in most leagues, you're winning leagues with a 3.6 or lower ERA. So, I mean, you don't need you don't need to have like a 3.2 ERA. I mean, 3.2 will probably get you first place in ERA, but you don't need first place. You just need to get somewhere like in the top third of your league for ERA. So anyway, Pablo Lopez, yeah, I mean, he got traded to the Twins. I like, the Twins it's still Hubert H. Homer Freedome. It's still a solid park for him. He'll be, I think he's actually a guy I like a lot for a bounce back. He had, his Ks were down a little bit last year, but I could see them bouncing back, and even if they don't bounce all the way back to like 2021 when he had a 10.1 K per nine, even if they get up to like a 9.3 K per nine, he has really good command. I mean, the command's really what's selling you here. He has a solid command. If he gets like as long as he avoids like unlucky Babbitt, he should be really solid for like a 3.5 ERA and good solid Ks. Another just really solid number 3 starter.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I haven't seen it yet, but he's ditching the cutter for a slider, which could help with again some of the bats missed. And he's just a guy who kind of mixes his pitches up somewhat.
And also with your you mentioned the second half wasn't great. The second half wasn't good for ERA, but he actually had the 15th lowest hard contact percentage for the season and 16th lowest for the second half. He got beat up. His FIP was really like insane. He had the 8th highest difference in ERA and FIP in the second half. So he was really getting beat up in the second half for being unlucky. So yeah, I would take his second half with a grain of salt. I think he's going to be really solid.
Yeah, I agree. And he had a 3.18 BABIP in the second half compared to a 2.56 in the first half. So even if you meet him in the middle, like you said, it's like a 3.5 ERA, which is just fine where you're drafting an SP3. Number 45 is Lance Lynn. Last year he went 8-7. He had a 3.99 ERA, a 1.13 WHIP, 124 strikeouts, and 121 innings. You have projected for a 10-7 record, 3.48 ERA, 109 WHIP, 139 strikeouts, and 135 innings pitched. He missed the start of the season, struggled on his return, but second half was much more in line with what we expect from Lance Lynn.
Yeah, no, completely. And if I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I would guess his K minus walks for like that he probably had one of the lowest, one of the worst ERAs for K minus walks. I mean, he was so good. I mean, if you just look at his numbers, like a 9.2 K per nine and a 1.4 walk, or a 24% strikeout rate and a under 4% walk rate, a K minus walk of 20.5%. It's like to have a 3.99 ERA, he was really unlucky. He had to be really unlucky. He's so solid too. I mean, he's really like Lance Lynn. I've drafted already in a couple leagues. I love Lance Lynn because like even though last year he was a little banged up, and I don't necessarily know like he's going to stay healthy this year, but he feels like a workhorse that will be like good for 150 plus innings and just really solid ratios across the board, like a 1.13 whip last year in what was an unlucky down year. I again, Lance Lynn, great guy. I would draft Lance Lynn everywhere.
Yeah, I basically have drafted Lance Lynn everywhere. He kind of just fits the mold of what I'm looking for in that range. Like I expect innings, I expect the ratios to be good, strikeouts to be, right in line with what he's always done. And I mentioned the second half was much more in line with what we normally see from him. The numbers there, he was at a 2.52 ERA, a 0.97 whip, a 26% K rate, and a sub 3% walk rate. So, I mean, fantastic numbers. Even if he doesn't quite put up those, like you're going to be happy with what you get from Lance Lynn. Up next is number 46, Kodai Senga. You have him projected for 10 and 9, 3.61 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 143 strikeouts, and 152 innings. In I was going to read his numbers from last year, but they're almost irrelevant since he's making the jump over.
I mean, he's been probably the most puzzling guy for me in drafts because like you look at his numbers from like, even if Japan isn't necessarily, a direct translation for stats over to the US. I mean, you look at his numbers and anyone who's put up those sort of numbers in the MPB, they've come over and they've been so much better than people are giving him credit for in like ADP wise. Like I was saying, I think I said it on the site. I said it somewhere that I think Senga is probably the safest bet to jump 100 spots from ADP from this year to next year. Like there's other guys, obviously there's guys that are going to jump up. Like, guys always come out of anywhere. Maybe Clinic finally figures it out. I mean, maybe a guy who, like Aronis Contreras or, I'm just grabbing names out of the thin air. Like maybe guys break out. Like, but I'm saying Senga, if you had to put a bet on one guy, absolutely moving up 100 spots from this year to next year, I can't imagine anyone is a safer bet than Senga. Like he is clearly a top 100 starter that just happens to be going around like 200 overall. Like it's like why? I don't know. I don't know why. Honestly, I have no clue. It's baffling to me. Like he is. If maybe people are just afraid of the unknown. Oh, poor baby. You afraid of the unknown? I was talking to you again in the Nissan Altima. I think Senga is so like a floor. Like his floor is so rock solid. He's probably a number 2 that is going as late as some number 4s. Like I honestly I don't know. I don't know what to tell people. Like I've drafted Senga in probably like 7 of 8 leagues so far. He's just sitting there. I mean, he's sitting there and it's like, okay, if you want actual like numbers, the Mets are going to win a ton of games. He's going to win a ton of games. He's a strike. He's going to get a 9, probably a 9.4 or higher K per 9. His command is a little wonky, but I mean, no more so than like Yu Darvish. Like he's definitely not like a low 2.5 walk rate guy, but it's not going to be 4+ either. It'll probably be like low 3 walk per 9. He's going to get like the park is good. He's going to get like at least a 3. I mean, a 3.5 ERA. I mean, Senga's he's no brainer. Like, honestly, the number one no brainer in drafts this year has been Senga for me. It's like where he's going, I don't even wait for ADP. I usually take him around like 150, which is like 30 picks before ADP.
Yeah, I mean he's going so late in drafts that you can, if you just pencil him in as you're like SP3, SP4, it feels such a strong ad where he's going. I agree. I think everything about him looks like he's going to perform well. Maybe the only thing I might slightly disagree on in the statement is that the Mets are going to win a bunch of games. The Mets, if they stay healthy, should win a bunch of games. The health thing, that's already started to fall apart. So I don't know if that'll stay together. But in general, I'm with you on Senga. Moving on to the next tier at 47 is Freddie Peralta. Last year he went 4-4, 3.58, 104 WHIP, 86 strikeouts, and 78 innings. You have down for 9-11, 3.88 ERA, 1.11 WHIP, 142 strikeouts, and 136 innings. He had the lat issue during the season. He had a shoulder issue at the end of the season. He always seems to miss some time, but I mean, if you're chasing upside, and I always am, Freddie Peralta always seems like a good upside gamble. It's like the Mondesi of pitchers, except that he's actually been on the field for 144 innings once.
Yeah, you're in the same ballpark. I feel like as Jeff, our past podcast host, because he was in. He drafted Peralta. He was showing me his team, last week or something, and he was asking me what I thought of it, and he had drafted Peralta, and I was like, I'm out on Peralta. For people who haven't looked at my rankings, this is a new tier, and I'm out on Peralta. I just worry. Honestly, I just worry about the health. It's nothing more than that. I've loved Peralta for so many years, and I was always in on him. I was in on him. I was in on Peralta before anyone. I'm Mr. Peralta. People call me Mr. Peralta at the supermarket. They know I love Peralta, but honestly, I can't mess with them. I just can't. It's the shoulder. The shoulder inflammation last year has got me off of him. And as I said earlier, there's just so many starters that if I even have the smallest issue with a player, I'm not drafting them. It's fine. There's another 70 pitchers to draft. I don't need to take anyone who I'm worried about. So unfortunately, this year I'm out on Peralta, but go with God. I hope he's good for you. I'm I don't risk, bad health on him, but I'm just not drafting him.
Fair enough. I mean, he's going in a range where you don't necessarily have to be completely in on him to get him. But I understand there's other pitchers in that area that you've already ranked, or that you could definitely talk yourself into if you needed this or that. Like Lynn's in that area. If you need more what seems like safer innings. Jesus Luzardo, who we talked about, who I absolutely love, is in that area. So I mean, there's a number. Jeffrey Springs, who led this whole thing off, is going to 20 picks after him. So there's no reason you have to reach for Freddie Peralta. Just if he happens to ever give us 170 innings, it's going to be fantastic, and that's always what I'm chasing. Number 48 is Tony Gonsolin. Last year, he went 16-1, a 2.14 ERA, a 0.87 WHIP, 119 strikeouts, and 130 innings. You have him down for a 10-9 record, 3.64 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 145 strikeouts, and 157 innings. He's never thrown a lot of innings. Don't really feel like that's ever going to happen, but like he performs every year somehow.
Yeah, he's also I think his ankle is banged up, so he's going to probably start the year on the IL, but it doesn't sound like it's a major concern. I actually haven't moved him in my rankings because it didn't sound like a major concern, and also I'm not drafting him anyway, so I mean, it's like out. Usually when guys are not not going to, usually when I'm not going to draft a guy, I just sort of I don't really mess with them, because he's already probably low in the rankings for, versus other people. So, why bother moving him even further down? Because I already have him down. Anyway, long story short is I'm not drafting him. I think last year, He was like so insanely like the Dodgers pixie dust, whatever they're doing over there. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know like if there's everyone talks about how the Astros were cheating. I don't know. In a couple of years, I feel like there's going to be an expose where it's like, oh, so the Dodgers were you actually throwing a weighted ball. There's something going on there, man. This is all conjecture, and I am not liable for lawsuits. Thank you.
But yeah, to your point, he had an 84% left on base, a 207 BABIP. Like an 84% left on base is for guys who have a 33% K rate, not a guy who has a 23% K rate. Like it was absolutely ridiculous how lucky he was. Again, he always has the ratios, the ERA whip are always on point. But that it never feels right. He just a guy I never really tend to own unless I'm really just searching for some ratios at the very end. And it's always in limited innings too, because A, he gets hurt, and B, he plays for the Dodgers. So you never know what innings wise you're gonna get from either. Moving on to number 49 is Lucas Giolito. He went 11-9 last year, a 4.90 ERA, 1.44 WHIP, 177 strikeouts, and 161 innings. Yeah, I'm projected for 12-8, 3.82 ERA, 1.31 WHIP, 182 strikeouts, and 171 innings. This was maybe one of the biggest disappointments that was, not specifically injury related across the board at pitching last year.
Excuse me, Jose Barrios would like a word. Jose Barrios.
Yeah,
Jose Barrios is on line one. Hold on one second. Jose, yeah, how can I help you? You want to screw me again this year? Oh man, come on, bro. I liked Giolito last year, and he gave me the old, he gave me the old, the old, how's your father? The old, yeah. I'm all about the bounce back. Hey, I'm Mr. Bounce Back. You know what? I go to the supermarket, and they're like, hey, are you Mr. Bounce Back? But honestly, I ain't messing with Giolito. I'm sorry. Like I said repeatedly, like I have said so many times, there's so many starters. I'm just not messing with Giolito. I mean, maybe he bounces back, and you know what? More power to him. Like I always say that it's like if I'm drafting correctly, it doesn't matter if other people hit on their stuff. Like I should still be okay. I should still be good, even if the guy who takes Giolito in my league gets a good price for him. It's like, okay, great. That's fine. I'm hoping to still be better with my team. So, you know what? If you take Giolito and he does well for you, hey, more power to you. All the best. But I am not messing with Giolito. He was so bad last year. I mean, no way. Not me, man.
He had some very weird numbers last year. On the road, he had a 3.83 ERA. At home, he was a 6.08. But somehow the White Sox hitters couldn't hit at all at home. So that makes no sense at all to me.
Bro? What is that? What is that?
And like his ERA.
A 6 point. What? Did you say 6 points? A 6 point something? Yep. Oh, man, dude.
At home, where nobody could hit on the White Sox.
Where no one. We're like the best hitter was like Gavin Sheets.
But he got lit up.
I don't know what was going on with the White Sox. They were honestly like their hitters were so like blah, good for average, but no power whatsoever. But their pitchers all gave up so many home runs. Lance Lynn gave up a lot of home runs too. It's like, what's going on, man? What are they using a different ball when the White Sox are pitching? Is that like because Manfred doesn't like Reinsdorf or something? I thought they were buds. What's up?
We could get Jerry Reinsdorf pissed off. That'd be great for everybody involved, quite honestly. I will say, like, Giolito is maybe the case for fastball velocity. Like his numbers are directly tied to fastball velocity. When he was sitting 94 plus, he was an ace. Now that he ended the season at 91. He's sitting 92, 93 this spring for what it's worth. He was sitting 92 most of last year. Like, if he's not going to get back to 94, you probably don't want him on it, honestly. So I took some shots early on, but I have backed off after seeing the spring training velocities. Number 50 is Dustin May, who I absolutely love and have a little bit higher than this. But last year he went 2-3. He had a 4.50 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 29 strikeouts in 30 innings. He was kind of yo-yoed back and forth. He had some injury things, like he didn't really start. This year you have him projected for a 7-3 record, 2.64 ERA, a 107 WHIP, 102 strikeouts, and 95 innings. Gray, he has some nasty stuff. This is about the prospect pedigree and the stuff, not necessarily what the numbers say.
Right. Well, he was returning from Tommy John surgery, so
Yeah.
there is that. It wasn't just injuries bouncing back.
Well, it was injury. I mean, that's what it was.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's
get it.
fair. You know what? It's a HIPAA violation either way. So we'll just ignore that. So my problem with Dustin May, and we're still in pitchers who I don't like. If people listening and want to go with beat on, hey, more power to you. I'm fine yielding to beat on. If you want to draft Dustin May, go for it. My issue with him is like his career high for innings is like what 50? I mean, how many innings could this guy throw? Like maybe he throws 120 innings this year. Maybe. Like I put him down for I project him for 95 innings, and that's almost twice as much as he's pitched for like the last 4 years. So I don't know. I mean, I actually like Dustin May. I'm with you. Like I like he's got good stuff. I think he's really talented. I wouldn't be surprised if he put together like a Gosling year from last year. Like he could be really good this year. I just don't. I worry about the innings, so I'm just out on him.
Yeah, I don't tend to worry about innings once we get past, the top 20 or so pitchers, because at this point, like I'll find pitchers on the wire. You leave your draft. If you get 4 pitchers that you can roster all year round, you've done a good job on your pitching staff. Like that's all you really need out of them. So if I can get Dustin May for half the season and maybe he gets 6th man or maybe he goes to the bullpen, then I just replace him with somebody else. I'm perfectly fine with leagues if we're not talking about NL only or draft and hold types. Like I'm perfectly fine getting 20, 130 innings out of Dustin May and then figuring it out from there.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next tier, that's number 51, Charlie Morton. Last year he went 9-6, 4.34 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, 205 strikeouts, and 172 innings. You have him down for 12-7, 3.76 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 192 strikeouts, and 167 innings. He had a terrible home run in the fly ball last year. Basically, like had 3 pretty good months and 3 really bad months that all combined into like not great numbers. I'm not a Charlie Morton guy this year. Are you? Are you in on Charlie Morton?
I am. So this is a new tier again. Yeah, I'm in on Charlie Morton. I think I see his second half of 11.2 K per 9 and a 3.2 walk rate, and he's usually around a 2.5 walk rate, and not like veteran pitchers aren't necessarily, they don't like get worse commands usually. Like it's not a thing you usually lose as you get older is your command. So I think it was a fluky thing. I think his command was pretty, like his command being wonky last year was fluky. So I wouldn't be surprised if he has a solid bounce back. I also, like we see with Verlander and Scherzer and, so many other Wainwright, even though he looks terrible in the spring, but Wainwright up until this spring, older starters have been pretty good for like fantasy value later on for having like pretty safe, usable fantasy value. And Charlie Morton's held on. He's held on to his Ks really well as he's gotten older. And his velocity is more or less where it has been for the last couple of years. So yeah, I'm in on Charlie Morton. Again, Braves, good team, should be solid for wins. I like him. We're at a point now like Charlie Morton is my first number 4 starter. So I think at this point, there's gonna be some warts on some of these pitchers. They're not all gonna be like perfect. But Charlie Morton, I think, is a good guy for like, solid innings, good, possible. It should be good for wins. Great, good, solid Ks, and decent enough on ratios.
Yeah, I think it's kind of if I need total strikeouts at this point, I'm fine going Charlie Morton. But outside of that, I'm not really in on him. The curveball wasn't breaking like it has been. Velocity was slightly down on the fastball. I feel like it's starting to go. And if you watched him pitch, like it wasn't that he was. So the walk rate went up, but it was really him getting himself into a mess because he was locating so poorly last year. So he was either missing the zone completely or he was just hanging curveballs right over the middle and people were just smashing the living shit out of it. So it's just like there's blowups coming. Like that's how he's pitching now. I will say, like most of those blowups came on very predictable matchups. So if you're matching him up, I feel like you can still do that with him. I just wouldn't roll him out there every single start, and you just kind of got to be aware of that a little bit with him. He tends to go earlier than I want him because some people just kind of are blanking out last year, and I'm not doing that. Number 52 is Nick Ladolo. Last year he went 4-7, 3.66 ERA, 1.25 WHIP, 131 strikeouts, and 103 innings. Young projected for an 8.9 record, 3.51 ERA, 1.20 WHIP, 158 strikeouts, and 129 innings. Missed the first half due to back issues, and the second half he had a 2.92 ERA, 106 WHIP, and a 21% K rate, sub-9 walk per rate. So it was really just those first couple starts back that kind of threw the numbers off a little bit. I like me some Nick Ladolo.
Yeah, no, I do too. I will say that like Nick Ladolo or Charlie Morton or number fours, like these are these are kind of contingent on how you've drafted your first three. Like so a Charlie Morton is a better number four on a fantasy staff that has like a little bit more risk up top. Whereas like if you have a solid three starters, guys who are like rock solid, who you feel really confident in, I think Nick Ladolo is probably a better move than a Charlie Morton, So it's just a matter of like how you're putting together your pitching staff. Ladolo, though, I agree with I don't really see. Again, we're saying same stupid same stupid comments over and over again, but like you look at like a Nick Ladolo. And I don't know let's see where his ADP is. So his ADP is actually a little bit higher than I have him ranked. But I mean, again, there's just so many starters, man. It's like if you want Nick Ladolo, go, man. YOLO. YOLO, bro. YOLO.
Yeah, if you want Nick Ladolo, you will have to take him a little bit higher than where you have him. He's going kind of more in the Lance Lynn, Nestor Cortez, Jesus Luzardo, Giolito range. But that's fine. Like any of those guys could give you similar numbers. I like him in that range. So it really just depends on which one of them happens to get to me. He's in Cincinnati, so the park's not great. The team's not good. So that could be kind of the determining factor when you're looking at maybe some of those other guys in that tier, though. Moving on to number 53, that's Brady Singer. Last year he went 10-5. He had a 3.23 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, 150 strikeouts, and 153 innings. You have him down for a 10-7 record, 3.53 ERA, 108 WHIP, 186 strikeouts, and 184 innings. He improved the movement on his sinker. Second half numbers were even better than the numbers I gave you up top. He had a 2.53 ERA and a 105 WHIP. Brady Singer looks like a great ratios guy. K's are, may not be spectacular, but you're just going to take some good ratios from Brady Singer.
Yeah, no, completely. I also I wrote a Brady Singer sleeper post as well. He's just another guy where you look at his numbers from last year and you're like, just give me that again at his ADP, which is like 190 overall. I mean, you can't really go that wrong. I mean, it's like how bad could that be? Like, I mean, I guess if he got unlucky on like Babbitt or his or homers allowed or left on base, maybe like maybe he could get unlucky. But even if he just repeats last year, it's still like I mean he's already out earned an ADP of 190 overall just by him repeating what he already did. Like, I mean, I don't know, man. I love Brady Singer. He's another guy who I'm drafting everywhere. He's another easy one for me. It's like because of his upside is probably lower than most. I do think that he's probably a guy who will be drafted like next year around like, at most maybe 150 overall. Like he's not going to take a huge jump. Like he's not a guy, like you're not going to draft Brady Singer and get like a number, like a top 10 overall starter. Like his upside is limited. Like you mentioned, the Ks are not insane. Like he's really more of a ratios bat. He's kind of like, they said that, Greinke really helped him last year. And he is actually like kind of like a Greinke ish type. Not Greinke, when Greinke was very young, he actually had a decent number of strikeouts. But I mean, he is now, but Greinke now, as he progressed, as he got older, I could see Brady Singer, how he was helped by Greinke because, the good command, solid, not spectacular strikeouts. It looks like, I see the imprint. Also, Greinke won't pay Chipotle for their guacamole. Maybe Brady Singer brought that into the clubhouse. It's a feel good story.
Yeah, maybe he makes his own.
Yeah,
and helps everybody out.
Maybe he makes his own. Maybe who knows? But it's a feel good story. Go with
it. For what it's worth, I said he had a 19.6 K rate. It was actually a 24% K rate. 19.6 was his K to walk rate. So sorry about that mistake right there. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Brady Singer is very solid. Maybe not ace upside, but again, very solid pitcher that you could add. And I like where he's going in drafts as well. Number 54 is Grayson Rodriguez. Last year in AAA, he went 6-1. He had a 2.20 ERA, 0.93 WHIP, 97 strikeouts, and 69 innings. You have him down for an 8-3 record, a 3.37 ERA, 107 WHIP, 127 strikeouts, and 106 innings. He's one of the top pitching prospects in baseball, high 90s fastball. He's vastly improved his changeup over the last couple of years. It is now a plus pitch, if not a plus pitch. He has a good slider as well and a passable tight curveball. I mean, if Grayson Rodriguez starts in the rotation, if we were assured of that, I feel like his ADP would be higher.
Yeah, it's appropriate that in AAA last year he had 69 innings because Grayson Rodriguez makes me horny. That's a good snippet for just cut that out.
Just cut that and play that over and over
again. Yeah, just keep playing that. That's our TikTok for this week. Anyway, so Grayson Rodriguez, I've drafted Grayson Rodriguez probably more than I should because the Orioles are, a bunch of cheap bastards and maybe they do try and suppress him even more and send him down. But, in most leagues, I'm going to hold him on my bench, even if they do send him down, which, I think he's in the rotation to start the year. So Grayson Rodriguez is going to be an ace for 120 innings, whether it's from like April through August or if it's, May or June through September, it's going to be one of those. Like he's going to be an ace. Like his stuff is ridiculous. I don't know, people who are not excited about Grayson Rodriguez, it's only because they haven't actually watched him pitch. Like his stuff is ridiculous. Like you don't have to be a scout to look at Grayson Rodriguez and be like, oh, that's good. That's really good. So yeah, I've been drafting him everywhere. Like it's so funny too. Like we were I think in our Razzball writers group chat, we were talking about Brett Beatty with this, but like Grayson Rodriguez to me is similar in that like right now he's going around like 200 overall, but if he were to get sent down or if he were just to start the year in the minors and he were on waivers and he were to get called up like a week into the season, his fab would be like 3/4 of people's budgets. Like people would be like, "Oh my God, Grayson Rodriguez," and they would like throw like so much money of their fab towards getting Grayson Rodriguez. But now, as they're able to actually draft him for free in drafts, they're like, I don't know. Maybe. I don't know. There's always Jose Leclerc. It's like, what? Dude, how is Jose Leclerc? I mean, obviously saves versus starter, different thing kind of, but okay, we'll take an actual starter. It's like, how is John Gray, to keep it in the Gray family? This is all Gray, an all Gray podcast here. How's John Gray going within a mile of Grayson Rodriguez in drafts? Like, it doesn't make any sense, man. Like, it doesn't, like, how is, like, I don't know. There's so many guys. Like, you can go through like ADP and just like pull your hair out, because a lot of it doesn't make any sense. But like Grayson Rodriguez I mean, he's going to be an ace. He's like, I honestly, I said about Kodai Senga before that he's going to jump 100 picks. I mean, Grayson Rodriguez is probably going to jump a bunch too next year. I think he's a little bit riskier than Kodai Senga, but I mean, Grayson Rodriguez, for every inning he's pitching this year, it's going to be beautiful.
Yeah, I mean, he's great. I have no issues with taking him. You know, it is, again, a team build thing. If you need innings, he's not going to be your guy. But if you're just chasing the upside, absolutely. And especially if you have room for him, if he gets sent down, you know, you get ahead of that bad process and you just roster him for a few weeks until he does come up, if he doesn't get the rotation spot right out of the gate. You know, it does look like the Orioles pretty much play consecutive days for the first few weeks, other than a few day breaks here and there. So, I mean, it's not a situation where without him, they can kind of still do the rotation. It feels like they're still going to need a 5-man rotation. So either he's up in, you know, from the start, or he comes in a little bit later. Either way, going to be fine. Moving on to the guy you just talked about, John Gray, at number 55. Last year he was 7-7, 3.96 ERA, 1.13 WHIP, 134 strikeouts in 127 innings. You have him projected for 11-10, 3.77 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, and 154 strikeouts in 151 innings. I'm gonna say this is maybe the first one that I'm not really overly excited to talk about, Gray.
Yeah, I mean, he does elicit a little bit of a yawn. I'll say that. You know, it's in the name, Gray. You know, it's a bit cloudy on facts. I think John Gray, and also the next guy on the list is Sonny Gray. We could just do them both together because they are like so similar. As of at least they're going at ADP is actually, they're like right next to each other in ADP. They're right next to each other in my rankings. They're really super similar. It's just like John Gray will give a little bit more strikeouts, and Sonny Gray has a little bit better command. So it's going to be a little, so he'll have, in theory, he should have a little bit better ratios. And they're both, you know, wins are a toss-up either way for most guys, and it's no different for these two. So yeah, I mean, they're both. I feel like I've drafted. I think I've drafted Sonny Gray. I don't know if I've drafted John Gray yet. And I actually drafted myself in one league, which is, you know, I mean, people were like, "Are you sure you want yourself?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've been working on my slider." But yeah, I think, you know, Sonny Gray and John Gray are like basically like solid number 4s. Not exciting. They're not like Grayson Rodriguez. You know, this is the Gray podcast. They're not Grayson Rodriguez with the upside, but they're solid. They're fine.
Yeah, I'll say on John Gray, the reason I kind of gave him a very meh intro is just like that's what he is. Like there's no standout tool. He's just like meh across the board. Like maybe strikeouts, he's you know, slightly above meh, but the rest of it, like I don't know where you're getting any kind of upside from. At least Sonny Gray. I mean, last year he had a 3.08 ERA in 119 innings. We're only 2 years removed from him being a 30% K guy. Now, I don't really expect that to come back, but like there's at least some upside shot with Sonny Gray. I don't know where the upside shot comes with John Gray. He's very like I need innings type of guy, and he's not even like a 180 inning guy. So again, I just don't know what the upside shot is on John Gray. Just not a guy that ends up on my rosters very often. Moving on to number 57 after Sonny Gray is Drew Rasmussen. And last year he went 11-7. He had a 2.84 ERA, 104 WHIP, 125 strikeouts, and 146 innings. You have him down for 10-6, 3.33 ERA, 106 WHIP, 138 strikeouts, and 154 innings. The velocity dropped somewhat as a starter, but he's still averaging over 95 ERA WHIP numbers in line with 2021. I mean, I like Drew Rasmussen if you're not chasing Case.
Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, no, I mean, his command is beautiful. So if you're probably, you should at least get decent ratios. Last year, I mean, if you're just like at 150 innings, he's 146 innings he threw last year, and like if you're looking at guys who are like I don't know, going at like where's his ADP? I'm looking it up. Hold on, what's that? He's going at 170 overall. 170 overall. His ADP is he had 146 innings and a 2.84 ERA and a 1.04 WHIP. I mean, he got it. I mean, you can't throw a rock and you're gonna hit 7 starters who are gonna give you good ratios. I mean, it's like this is ridiculous, man. You're at the start. You're at the fourth fantasy starter range for where you're drafting Drew Rasmussen. Rasmussen. Easy for me to say. You're drafting him in a range where like he's basically in most leagues, like if you want him, you can have him. Like and his and he's giving ratios under a 3 ERA and a barely 1 WHIP. I mean, like you said, he doesn't strike out a ton of guys, but I mean, he's like he's easy. Like you bank him is like he fixes your Dylan Cease earlier. Like I'm not drafting Dylan Cease as we talked about in the last podcast, but if you are drafting Dylan Cease, his ratios aren't going to be quite as good, but his Ks are going to be insane. You match up Dylan Cease with a Rasmussen, you're like, oh, okay, well, I just, I'm the best fantasy baseball person ever.
No, this is going to be maybe a slight reach, but I'm just going to throw it out there because we know Drew Rasmussen's never going to throw 200 innings. He pitches for the Rays. Like the Rays don't have 200 inning pitchers. It just doesn't happen. But like, what's the difference between Drew Rasmussen at 170 and Sandy Alcantara as the third pitcher off the board, Gray? Like, other than the innings,
nothing. You match up Rasmussen and a solid MR who is free in the draft. You just take a random middle reliever at like pick 300 or off of waivers even.
Yeah,
you just
Michael King off of waivers last year.
Yeah, you just pick up Michael King off of waivers and you team him up with Rasmussen. You have Sandy Alcantara. I'm sorry. Did we just build Sandy Alcantara out of waivers? Oh, my bad. I didn't know we were doing that.
And for what it's worth, the Rays were letting Rasmussen actually go into the 6th and sometimes even the 7th inning. Oh my goodness, like that is unheard of for Rays starters. So like, if you can go into
I mean, in all fairness, he didn't start until the 3rd inning, but no, I'm joking. Yeah, no, completely. Yeah, no, I mean, he's 140 plus innings of solid ratios. Like you're not gonna find hitters that are the equivalent to Rasmussen this late. I mean, it's so obvious to me that there's so many starters, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Number 58 is Chris Sale. He only threw 5 2/3 innings, so I'm not even going to run through the numbers. But you have him projected for 5 3, 3.26 ERA, 102 WHIP, 98 strikeouts, 84 innings. I mean, do you remember how good Chris Sale was, Gray? Like that was such a fun time when Chris Sale.
Oh my God. Okay, so you know what? I I do remember it. But you know who else remembers it? Everyone who's drafting him at 130 overall. People lost their minds. On average, he's going before Nestor Cortez. Oh, okay. Have you gotten hit in the head recently? hey, man, do you have a concussion? Because you're drafting like it. hey, bro, is something wrong with your brain? You might want to, count to 3 backwards. I think you're drafting Chris Sale a little too early. Now, I mean, I don't know, man. Like, Chris Sale is like, I get the upside. I get it, man. I get the upside play. But you look at Chris Sale, right? And his upside is probably, it's fantastic, probably. But Grayson Rodriguez is going 70 picks after him. And is that upside not as good? And at least you don't have like 5 years of him not being good, right? I mean, right? I don't get the Chris Sale. For people who haven't read my rankings, I'm out on Chris Sale. This is a new tier. I'm not drafting Chris Sale anywhere. People are out of their minds. Like, honestly, if he were going maybe 70 picks later, I would probably consider it. Like, I look at Chris Sale and I'm like, yeah, like Jake Flattery, like they're all sort of in the same ballpark of, and Jake Flattery is actually next on the in the rankings. It's just like, I mean, it's fine for a crazy upside pick if you want to like drop a buck on a pick 6 at the lotto. If you're at the gas station and you're like, hey man, I'd like to win $300 million, give me one of those tickets. Then sure, then okay, fine, then draft Chris Sale later. But at 130 overall, are you people crazy, bro? Are people crazy?
Yes. The answer is yes, Gray. He should go 100 picks later. Like you said, in the Flaherty, Barrios, Trevor Rogers, Tyler Mahle, like that's the group that he belongs in. But he doesn't because he's Chris Sale. I will say, like, for the 5 2/3 innings he pitched and the 40 innings he pitched the year before, like they were good innings. I wouldn't expect to get any innings from him really, but they were good innings. So I see where people are going. I'm not going to do it at where he's currently going. You can get similar upside shots, honestly, with a whole lot less risk where he's currently at. Next tier is Jack Flaherty. He had 36 innings last year. He pitched to a 4.25 ERA. His last 28 innings were to a 3.86 ERA. If that makes you feel any better. Young projected for a 7-7 record, 3.57 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, 119 strikeouts on 130 innings. I will say he did finish the season throwing 94, 95, which is where he's kind of sat his whole career. 92.5 average so far this spring, but he's still kind of building up. And we saw that last year. He didn't get his fastest velocity right out of the gate. I'm kind of in on Jack Flaherty, but only if he keeps falling.
Yeah, no, completely. That's what I was about to say. Like, this is the same tier, Chris Sale and Jack Flaherty. This is a 2-person tier. Like I said earlier, I was struggling finding pitchers I didn't like. So this is just like, I was like, it's only a 2-person tier because I couldn't find other terrible pitchers. But Jack Flaherty, I will say this for Jack Flaherty, like he's young enough where I could envision a bounce back from him. And his price is cheap enough in drafts where I honestly, I haven't drafted Jack Flaherty and I don't plan on it. But if someone were to take a Jack Flaherty flyer, a Flaherty, that I could see that. I mean, it wouldn't shock me if Jack Flaherty gets somewhat back to because he was really good at one point, and he got derailed for a little while, and he's still only 27. So I could see the Flaherty flyer, but yeah, it would have to be late, and it's probably not. It's not going to happen for me, but I hope it happens for my children. No, I don't have kids, but yeah, I hope it happens someday.
Yeah, it sounds like I like Flaherty a little bit more, but I'm 100% keeping my expectations in reined in a little bit because we don't really know how he's going to come back. It may be a situation where I'm not necessarily starting him right off the bat because again, he's sitting kind of 92 this spring. Once I see him kind of hit his velocity and get back to it, that's when I'll feel like I can go ahead and start him. But really not a bad guy to throw on your bench and wait and see. Number 60 is Merrill Kelly. He's kind of the complete opposite, as well as our 61. I'm going to group these two together because basically in my mind they're essentially the same thing. Merrill Kelly at 60 and Miles Mikolas at 61. A lot of innings, low Ks, should be solid ratios. I mean, you could do worse than that combination at 60 and 61 among pitchers, Gray.
Yeah, no, completely. They remind me of like before last year. It was like Christian Walker and Hunter Dozier were like tied at the hip. Where they were like tied at the hip, like always in rankings next to each other and always having the same fantasy value. And then Christian Walker obviously kicked Hunter Dozier to the curb, and he got cool with the better first baseman. But Merrill Kelly and Miles Mikolas remind me of that because it's like they're basically the same thing. Like it's like if you want. And I've drafted both of them in multiple leagues. Like we're back in, a place with starters where I'm drafting them. These are like number 5 starters at this point. This is like, the guys who you're not looking for like crazy strikeouts. You just want like someone who's going to be solid for a bunch of innings and isn't going to kill you. And, that's valuable in some leagues. This weekend at Tout Wars, I drafted Miles Mikolas because I needed innings. It's not like an exciting pick, but when you're going with cheaper pitchers and you can't afford the aces, it's nice to be able to get like a good solid, maybe 200 innings of good ratios potentially. So yeah, I'm in on both of them for their price and knowing what to expect.
Yeah, when you do weighted pitching, as you mentioned, you kind of have to grab some innings guys. You can't just go all upside and just take a bunch of 100 inning guys. You fit those in with your plan and where they fall in the draft, but you do need to stack some innings if you're going to weighted pitching. And so yeah, Merrill Kelly and Miles Mikolas are good guys to grab late to just fill in some of those back end innings if you do take a Grayson Rodriguez or any of the shorter inning guys we've kind of talked about to this point. Number 62 is Andrew Heaney. Last year he went 4-4, 3.10 ERA, 109 WHIP, 110 strikeouts in 72 and 2/3 innings. You have him down for 8-5, 3.88 ERA, 126 WHIP, 144 strikeouts and 124 innings. He dealt with a shoulder injury, but before we saw he had the best velocity of his career until he got hurt, and he ditched the changeup. All of that led to kind of the best K rate we've ever seen from him. Where are you at? Are you buying into these Andrew Heaney changes if he can stay on the mound?
I would buy into him more if he wasn't a Dodger last year. So it's really like I don't know what's going on there, man. There's something going on though with the Dodgers pitchers, as mentioned earlier with Gosling. I like Heaney for like the price. If he's there, I could see drafting him. He's like the polar opposite. Like he's also in my mind, he's still a number 5. Or an early 4, I guess, or an early 5 or a late 4. Anyway, he's like the polar opposite of like Mikolas and Merrill Kelly because like those guys are super safe and Heaney's not safe at all. Like honestly, I have projections for him as you read off, but I don't know what to expect from him. We could get anywhere from like a maybe 60 to 75 innings of like a 9K per 9 or like 140 innings of like a 12 plus K per 9. Like, I don't know. I honestly have no idea. And his ERAs have been all over the map too. So I like him, but he's much riskier for, I would draft him, but he's riskier than I usually go later starters. Like because I try and be a little more conservative with my later starters in most deeper leagues, at least, because you have to be if you've gone a little bit riskier up front.
Yeah, he kind of sits at the bottom of that 200 plus upside group that I like. I target one of them, and I'll take one of them out of the draft, and that's usually about it. But it's like Flaherty, Trevor Rogers, Sonny Gray, and Andrew Heaney. Like those are the four arms that I'm generally looking at in that range, and he kind of sits at the bottom of it because maybe I don't buy it as much. It is part of the Dodgers thing. The shoulder injury worries me, and the fact that it was like, it's one season out of all the time we've been waiting for Andrew Heaney to become a good pitcher. So
Totally. But I mean, the upside is enormous. Like
yeah, the upside might be better than all those guys.
Like he had the highest percentage of swings in last year in the major leagues, like above like Burns, above Strider, above McClanahan. Like he's phenomenal. If that last year was actually reality,
he is real. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Moving on to number 63 is Ross Stripling. He signed with San Francisco. Last year he went 10-4, 3.01 ERA, 102 WHIP, 111 strikeouts, and 134 innings. Young projected for 8.9, 3.77 ERA, 107 WHIP, 131 strikeouts, and 148 innings. He did set his career high in innings pitched at 32 years old. So at 33, I don't know if I project him for, everybody has him generally under 150, which is, I think, the most we could potentially give him. But kind of like what we were saying with a couple other guys, he's going to give you solid ratios, or he should. K is probably not all that spectacular.
Yeah, no, completely. But I think he does, like, he's so underrated. Like I didn't write a sleeper post on him because I think it would have put people to sleep because he's pretty boring. Stripling. Yeah, he's pretty boring. So but I think he's one of the more underrated guys. Like he's going at 300 ADP, and if you were to look at his numbers, like for his career, not just last year, but for like his career, I mean, he's basically Drew Rasmussen, like maybe a little bit like a tad higher on strikeouts and maybe a little bit lower on command. But I mean, he's pretty much like a 8K per nine, super low 2 walk rate and a 3.7. Like he has a 3.78 ERA for his career across across 672 innings. So that's a pretty safe number 5. Like that, it's not exciting. Don't get me wrong. Like you're not drafting Stripling and being like, woo, but you can do worse, I think. And his ADP, like you can draft him basically as like a number 7 starter, and he's a number 5 in reality.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily have him at 5 range, but I'm with you that he tends to go quite undervalued. He had 2 struggle years before this. So 2021, he had a 4.8 ERA. In 2020, the abbreviated season, it was 5.84. So you kind of throw out the shortened season, but even last year in 2021, the 4.8, and I think that's why you get the drop off in the ADP, despite his solid ratios last year. Mainly, like most of that, the bad numbers come from home run, the fly ball, though. He controlled that very well last year. Maybe some of that was the change to kind of the dead ball, but also he's going to San Francisco, which makes you feel pretty good about the home run, the fly ball staying in check as well. Moving on to number 64 is Zach Eflin. Last year he went 3-5, 4.04 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, 65 strikeouts, and 75 innings. Young projected for 8-7, 3.71 ERA, 1.14 WHIP, 118 strikeouts, and 138 innings. I mean, some people like Zach Eflin. I've never really been a fan, but at some point the pitching has to become somewhat boring. I mean, we can't be talking about potential aces all the way down the line.
Right. But even the boring guys, at least so far, I mean, you look at Eflin, you're like, again, not to say everyone's Drew Rasmussen, but I mean, I understand why the Rays went out and got Eflin. Like he looks like a high 7 to 8 K per nine and a under 2 walk rate guy, that usually gets you in a solid ratio area. I mean, so far in his career, he hasn't been really solid for ratios, at least on the ERA side. His whip was 1.12 last year, so that's not terrible. So I mean, Cool Whip wrote a sleeper post actually on F1. I know he likes him a lot. I like F1 too. Again, I mean, it's not super exciting. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, he's not going to be Grayson Rodriguez, but he could be a cheap man's Jeffrey Springs, and that's not bad.
Yeah, I would say Jeffrey Springs is a pretty solid person to compare him to, just because we're also talking about a guy who's moved organizations kind of like Springs did. And the thing that I think maybe can go in Eflin's favor is that if they teach him the changeup sinker pitch that they teach everybody, is he already had a decent changeup. So if he can actually get it to where it's a plus changeup, like that could change things around for Eflin quite a bit. I mean, that single change turns Springs from like a 6 ERA reliever to like a 3 ERA starter. So if Eflin can kind of understand that pitch from the Rays, I do think that is where, some of the potential hype comes from. And as you said, the Rays just don't spend money. So anytime they spend money, it's kind of a signal that they see something. Number 65 is Noah Syndergaard. Last year he went 10-10, 3.94 ERA, 1.25 WHIP, 95 strikeouts, and 134 innings. You have projected for 10-4, 3.82 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 128 strikeouts, and 142 innings. I mean, maybe he gets the Dodgers voodoo magic, but Noah Syndergaard is not the Noah Syndergaard we remember from 6 years ago.
Yeah, I know. It's a bummer too, because he was
so good.
He was so good, and then he's lost command. He still has good good command. So I mean, if the K's bounce back a little bit, he could be solid. Like, I could see the Dodgers turning him into like another ace, because that's what the Dodgers do. If they could do it to Tony Gosling, I mean, do it to anyone. Not that I didn't like Tony Gosling last year, but I mean, I didn't like him. I didn't think he was going to be a top 10 starter. I mean, Noah Syndergaard, this whole part of the rankings is like, these number 5 starters are, Noah Syndergaard is probably going to be safe for, Dodgers are decent for wins, so he should have wins. He should be decent for ratios. He really, like, the K's, the falling of the K's is like so dramatic last year. Like, no, I mean, I can't remember another guy, falling as badly as he did, going from like a 10 K per nine guy to 6.4 in like 3 years. It's like really terrible. So yeah, I don't know, maybe more like 5 years, but still, I would draft Syndergaard as a number 5. I don't have like huge hopes for him to be. I don't have like these like grandiose hopes of him bouncing back to like his previous self, but yeah, he's fine for number 5.
Yeah, I don't think I have a single share of Syndergaard yet this season, and I probably won't. Like, literally the only thing that I can say is Dodgers voodoo magic. Like, that's the only thing that potentially gets him back to where I would want him on my roster. And I don't even know if there's that left with the pitch clock, with the shift rules. Like, I don't know that the Dodgers voodoo is going to be the same as the Dodgers voodoo has been. Like, we're not getting Ks. We're not really getting good ratios. We're not getting a bunch of innings. It's just a guy I tend to just kind of like glaze over and go on to the next guy on my list. Number 66 is Jose Urquidy. Last year he went 13-8, 3.94 ERA, 1.17 WHIP, 134 strikeouts, and 164 innings. You have projected for 12-7, 3.81 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, 139 strikeouts, and 171 innings. I mean, this is just a sub 4 ERA, sub 1.2 WHIP. innings guy, right? Like there's not
Yeah.
too much to hide on Urquidy.
No, there's, and this is kind of like this whole tier, besides Heaney, which is like Andrew Heaney was like, he's like a man who like no tier really fits Andrew Heaney because who knows what's going to happen with Heaney. But I think Urquidy is like, similar to the other guys and like the Miles Mikolas, Merrill Kelly sort of are the defining guys of this tier where it's like 7+ K per nine ish and good command. And that should get you decent ratios, and it's not going to get you great strikeouts. So Urquidy's in like that mold. And the Astros might get him some good wins. So yeah, I haven't drafted Urquidy. I haven't drafted Syndergaard either, by the way. But you can't draft everyone. It doesn't mean I wouldn't. I think Urquidy's fine if you need a ratios play. Like if you need a Merrill Kelly or Miles Mikolas type, but Miles Mikolas and Merrill Kelly are gone, then Urquidy's fine.
Yeah, I'm with you. He's just he's a low budget version of those guys, but maybe on a slightly better team. So that's helpful too. Number 67 is Alex Cobb. Last year he went 7.8, 3.73 RA, 1.30 WHIP, 151 strikeouts on 149 innings. You have him projected for 11-10, 3.56 ERA, 1.28 WHIP, 157 strikeouts and 155 innings. The velocity was the best of his career. That came out in spring where that started. And he started to actually show some good changes in the second half where he went with a 3.40 ERA, a 25% K rate, and a sub 7% walk rate. I kind of like the game on Alex Cobb this late, Gray.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Alex Cobb is, there's so many starters, bro. There's so many starters. It's just like, it's endless how many starters there are. Alex Cobb, in retrospect, I probably am shortchanging Alex Cobb by ranking him this low. He's solid. Like most of this tier, as I've been saying, most of this tier besides Andrew Heaney is like a 7+ K per nine and a low 2 or even a 1 walk per nine. Whereas Alex Cobb is like he strikes out guys. Like he's got a 9. Like he had a 9 K per nine last year, and he had solid walks. I think, and also I kind of love Giant starters. Like I know they're not going to be a great team, but I am always in on Giant starters for the park is good. There's a lot of bad road teams in the NL West, like the Rockies especially. Diamondbacks aren't, they may not be great. I think the Giants just they pitch they coach up their pitchers. Like their pitchers are always better than you expect. Like even Anthony Descafani, I liked for him. Like I like him too. Like as a long man right now, I don't know if he's gonna have a spot in the rotation. Anyway, Alex Cobb is great. He's fine for like a late starter who should be a solid number 5.
Yeah, I'm completely with everything you said. Alex Cobb is kind of the reason I have John Gray like a lot lower than you do. Just like if I'm looking at numbers, like Alex Cobb's going to give me everything John Gray is, and maybe even better. Like he has more upside, I think, than we've seen from John Gray at any stop. Moving on to number 68 is Eric Lauer. Last year he went 11-7, 3.69 ERA, 1.22 WHIP, 157 strikeouts, and 158 innings. You have him down for 11-10, 3.85 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 177 strikeouts, and 174 innings. Lauer was coming off of a good season, and he put up another solid one. He seems to have kind of figured out where he sits. It's just what's the number of innings we're going to get from him.
Right. Yeah. And also the Brewers are also another team that coaches up their guys, their starters at least. They ruin a bunch of hitters. Yeah, which is weird too because their park is lousy. But yeah, the Brewers pitching staff is always usually very good. So yeah, Lauer is like I think if you put aside everything you know about Lauer and you just look at his numbers, you're like, well, that's a number 5. I think when the name comes in, then it becomes like, well, he's not really good, is he? I don't know. Like, I think the rap on him is, it should be at this point, it should be kind of squashed because, like, he's been good. Like you said, he's been good for 2 years now. Like, again, like, there's just so many starters that it's like, yeah, I'm fine with Eric Lauer. And he's going even later than Stripling. He's going like at 300 something overall. Like he's going like the Kente Maedas of the world, which actually Maeda, I drafted him in one league. But anyway, Lauer is, I mean, he's fine. He's not. I think he's going later than he should be. I have him ranked much higher. I don't think like him and Stripling, like I mentioned, I don't think they're really number 7s. I think they're more number 5s, but they're going as number 7s.
Yeah, Lauer changed his pitch mix about 2.5 years ago, and it's been pretty much like mid 3s, ERA 1.17 type of whip, like pretty much since then. So yeah, I mean, I think you take the discount because people think of Eric Lauer and his first 3 years, which were very unimpressive. But hey, I'll absolutely take him where he's going. Number 69 is Martin Perez. Last year he went 12-8, 2.89 ERA, 1.26 WHIP, 169 strikeouts, and 196 innings. You're projected for 13-7, 3.84 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, 167 strikeouts, and 190 innings. I mean, this is kind of the Merrill Kelly, but without a whip.
Yeah, no, yeah, exactly. That's what, yeah, I mean, I have, for many years, I've been out on Martin Perez, but I mean, again, it's like the Lauer thing where it's like after a while, it's like, you want to keep being wrong or you want to be right once in a while. So I'm choosing to be right. Okay. I'm avoiding being wrong this year. It's my new thing. I'm being like, yo, you going into the draft this year? How about you be right instead of wrong? You know what? That's what I'm doing.
That's a good way to go about drafts, Gray. I like that.
Yeah. You know what? It took me only like 15 years to realize I should be right instead of wrong. Again, like he's fine. Like I think he's a totally passable number 5. Like people who are like, I don't really like Martin Perez. Like, why? That was last year, Gray. This year, Gray likes him. There's no reason. He's been repeatedly, like I think it's like, I also think it might have something to do with projections, because some of the projections don't like some of these guys, and that's because like they their BABIPs are like lower than they should be, or for whatever reason. But I think that's also overrated in a lot of ways, because some of these guys actually pitch to weak contact. Like that's their gig. I mean, I know it shouldn't be. Some people say it's not a repeatable skill, but for some of these guys, it obviously is. So yeah, I like him as a number 5, and he's going as a number 7. So again, free money.
Yeah, I will say that the dead ball definitely helped Martin Perez. Also, he moved to Texas, which is not a home run park as we've seen in recent years. So like both those things are helping him in his numbers, but we also don't expect either of those things to change. So yeah, I'm perfectly fine with Martin Perez if you just need the innings and we're down this low. Number 70 is Cal Quantrill. Last year he went 15-5, 3.38 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 128 strikeouts, and 186 innings. You're projected for 10-10, 3.48 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 144 strikeouts, and 184 innings. So this is just another, innings, solid ratios guy. Like that's what we're looking at.
You honestly, you struggle to find bad pitchers. You really do. I mean, there's so many guys that you're like, am I really 300 picks into a draft and taking a guy who has a career 3.54 ERA across almost 500 career innings? I mean, it's not like I know ERA can be fluky, but I mean, at a certain point, you got to be like, uh, I know ERA is fluky, but ERA is an actual category in my league. So that's why I'm drafting it. I mean, Quantrill is like, I mean, he's solid. He's not spectacular, but he's a solid ratio guy who is like, should get you some wins, should keep you in the game for ratios. You're gonna need strikeouts from elsewhere, so you have to like, get strikeouts from a different pitcher. But yeah, he's fine. I don't mind him. I don't, I don't think there's any upside. Don't get me wrong, but he's a passable number 5.
Yeah. Should we just copy paste that onto number 71, Marcus Stroman, and keep it going here, Gray? Anything else you
Well,
want to
that's
add there?
no, totally, yeah, no. I honestly, this whole tier is like guys who are I think a number 5 that have like are safe for innings, except for Heaney. Like I said, Heaney was a tough one for me to rank because I didn't want to put him in a tier with Sale and Flattery and say I didn't want him. So I didn't put him in that tier. If people want to know the backstory, I didn't want to put him in a tier I didn't like because I could actually see drafting Heaney, but he didn't really fit into this tier. But it was, a square peg, round hole kind of thing. But Quantrill and Stroman, who you were about to say, I mean, they're all the same. It's like decent ratios, but not great Ks.
Yeah, that's where we're at. Next up on 72 is Nathan Eovaldi. He goes to Texas. Maybe that helps him with his home run the fly ball, which has always plagued him. Last year he was 6-3, 3.87 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, 103 strikeouts, and 109 innings. You're projected for 11-9, 3.71 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 159 strikeouts, and 166 innings pitched. Eovaldi's fastball velocity dropped as the season went on. He finished the season below 95. His second half ERA was 4.91. He had a 1.42 WHIP, sub 17% K rate for him in the second half. I'm pretty much out on Eovaldi, even though he costs nothing.
Yeah, no, I've drafted Eovaldi and I like Eovaldi. I think he's going a little bit higher than I have him ranked. I feel like there's some worry, velocity dropped. It's not great. He had an oblique, I think a couple weeks ago, but he's already throwing again in the spring, so that should be fine. But yeah, he's been for the longest time. He's been like an 8. I sounded like I was about to quote Goodfellas. For the longest time, I wanted to be a gangster. Ever since I could remember. Yeah, for the longest time, Eovaldi has been like a 8.5 or higher K per 9, and really solid command. So, I mean, that sort of gets him in this ballpark of like a solid, if not spectacular starter, which I'm fine. I'm fine to draft Eovaldi. I'm not expecting much. I'm expecting, what he always does. The 3.7 ERA, the maybe, good innings. He should he should be at least healthy, hopefully. So yeah, I'm fine with him.
All right, fair enough. I mean, he's probably better than I'm giving him credit for. I just the numbers are trending in the wrong direction for me. Number 73 is Carlos Carrasco. Last year he went 15-7, 3.97 ERA, 1.33 WHIP, 152 strikeouts, 152 innings. You have him projected for 13-8, 3.52, 1.30 WHIP, 153 strikeouts, and 149 innings pitched. 2 good months, carried most of his ERA for the season. Velocity is another one where we saw his velocity drop below 93 at the end of the season. I feel like I'd still feel better with Carrasco than Eovaldi, but I mean, where are you at?
I like, Carrasco is a guy who I've actually found myself wanting more the spring than I did when I wrote the rankings back in like November of last year, or whenever I wrote the rankings in November, December of last year. Yeah, I found myself liking Carrasco a little bit more as we've gone along in the preseason. I don't know. Maybe I'm getting influenced a little bit by like he's having a good spring, but 150 innings, in theory at least, 150 innings of a 9K per nine and a below 2.5 walk rate sort of falls in that range of guys. Like when he's going off the board, it could have something to do with the fact that his ADP is around like 300 overall too. So like when he's going off the board, if I want a guy like sometimes I don't want like Michael Kopech who goes around him, or other guys who are bigger flyers, who are bigger upside. Obviously Kopech has a lot more upside, but there's other guys. Like usually I'm taking like a Carrasco, and I'm like, it's not the most exciting, but I like the stability, and I feel like he's safer than most. So I think I have drafted him a couple places, and I found myself like wanting to draft him, and other people have taken him like before I could. So yeah, I've sort of liked Carrasco a bit more than I thought I would, like back when I first started doing the rankings.
Yeah, I'm with you. I thought I would just not just ignore him completely, but after kind of getting into it and seeing where he's going, I don't mind where he's falling to in drafts. Next up is a new tier, number 74, Edward Cabrera. He went 6-4 last year, 3.01 ERA, 107 WHIP, 75 strikeouts, and 117 and two-thirds innings. You have him projected for 8.9, 3.34 ERA, 118 WHIP, 147 strikeouts, and 132 innings. I mean, this is one of those upside shots that are very late. He's got a 96 plus mile an hour fastball. He's got a couple breaking balls and a change. The innings limit is pretty obvious, but other than that, I mean, I kind of like Edward Cabrera here.
Yeah, no, I do too. You can kind of see obvious, like you mentioned that this is a new tier, and it's pretty obvious. Like now we're at a point where it's upside. It's like you're going for it, man. You got it. You got a little pat on the back, and you're going for it. You know what I'm saying? Edward Cabrera is like he's high adrenaline. I like Edward Cabrera a lot. It's funny that like Edward Cabrera, though, like like in reality, Edward Cabrera could be a top 20 starter, top 25 maybe, because innings might be a little bit low. But say he could be a top 25 starter this year, and he's going like at 225 overall. But you could see a scenario where he could be a top 25 starter. But I have other guys, like I just mentioned, like the guys we just went over, like the Miles Micheloses and the Merrill Kellys of the world. They're not going to be top 25 starters, probably, unless they get super lucky on wins or something. Um, but I have them ranked ahead because they're so much safer. But you see, like in drafts, like Edward Cabrera is going like 80 picks before the Ross Striplings or some of the other guys that we talked about in the previous tier. Like Edward Cabrera, if you want Edward Cabrera, you're gonna have to draft him way higher than I have him ranked. And I could see how he could return that value. It's just a matter of whether or not on your team you want that risk. Like if you want the risk of an Edward Cabrera, and if your team can handle it, like especially in shallower leagues, I mean absolutely go for the risk. Like you want Edward Cabrera over Miles Mikolas in a shallow league, but in a deeper league, it depends on like the rest of your pitching staff. So Edward Cabrera, I love him. I don't really trust him. I don't trust him at all, really. Like he's got like crazy terrible command. Like you mentioned the velocity and the Ks. The Ks could be incredible. Like he could have 120 innings of like a 12 plus K per nine. Like he could have insane innings. I mean, excuse me, insane strikeouts over a short period of time, but his command's going to be wonky. He could really kill you. Like there's a potential here for him having like a disastrous start or two, which is just going to be, death. But yeah, he's exciting for sure.
Yeah, that's what you're looking at here, Edward Cabrera. He is exciting. As you mentioned, he's going before kind of the range of pitchers we're talking now. He's going more with the Sonny Gray, Andrew Heaney, Jack Flaherty range. So again, kind of in that upside shot range where it could go right or it could go wrong pretty easily. And that's where we're at with Edward Cabrera. But he's 25. So if you're looking at somebody who's coming on the upside of that upside shot, not coming off an injury or 35 years old, then maybe Edward Cabrera is your guy in that range instead. Moving on to the next guy, which is number 75, which is Tyler Glasnow, another guy who's going significantly earlier than this. Only threw 6 2/3 last year. UM projected for 6-4 record, 2.71 ERA, 0.96 WHIP, 114 strikeouts, and 82 innings. He had Tommy John in August of 2021. The velocity is still there. Already dealing with an oblique injury in the spring, though. Where are you at on Tyler Glasnow as just a flyer, right?
Is he still going much earlier than this, even after they said he was going to miss 2 months?
Yeah, he's still going 150, 160. And that's within the last 2 weeks, Gray. So
yeah, okay, yeah, no, I mean, yeah, I believe you. That's
how it goes.
That seems high. I mean, I get the allure, but he had 6 innings last year, and he's out 2 months. I mean, I don't know. I like to team Tyler Glasnow up with Chris Sale and have them both be on someone else's team. I like Tyler Glasnow. This is a tier of guys I would draft, but I'm not drafting them at the point. Like, if you're saying he's going at 160, I'm not drafting Tyler Glasnow. I have him ranked much later than that. So I like Glasnow if for maybe I have him projected for 82 innings, as you said. So, I like him for that's roughly 3 months, maybe a little bit under. So I like him, but I don't trust him at all. At all. So, I mean, at 160, I'm definitely not drafting him, though.
Who has more innings this year, Chris Sale or Tyler Glasnow?
I'll say Glasnow, but barely. That's a tough one. Who do you think?
I would go with Sale just because he's not currently going to miss 2 months of time.
That's fair. You know what?
Give me the guy
You're
who's
right.
Come out
you know what? You've swayed me. You're right. No, that's a safer call. Chris Sale, just because he's not currently injured, even though by the time we release this podcast, he could be injured.
Yeah, his arm could have just fallen off at this point, and then nobody would really be surprised.
Yeah.
Number 76 is Justin Steele. Last year he went 4-7, 3.18 ERA, 1.35 WHIP, 126 strikeouts, and 119 innings. Young project for 9-11, 3.46 ERA, 1.29 WHIP, 154 strikeouts, and 148 innings. His second half was very good. He had a 0.9 ERA, 31% strikeout rate. He's not going to be a whip guy, though. That's just never going to be it. And the difference was he just threw the slider a ton.
Yeah, no, totally. I wrote a sleeper post for Justin Steele, and I got to say, people are still sleeping on him. They're not interested in Steele, really. I mean, he's going around 300 overall. You can have Steele for free in just about any draft. No one really cares. I like him a ton. I actually, to be fair to everyone who hasn't drafted Steele, I haven't either yet. I like him, though. I just haven't, for whatever reason. Sometimes it just doesn't work out that you can't draft everyone. So, sometimes it just hasn't worked out. But I do like Justin Steele a lot. I think he's probably he's probably safer than I think people are giving him credit for. He looks like a solid 9.5 K per nine, mid 3 walk rate, 3.5 to 3.75 ERA maybe. And that's good. There's nothing wrong with that. I don't know. For whatever reason, I guess maybe the upside isn't, crazy interesting to people, so that's why he's falling a little bit. But yeah, he's still he's very reasonably priced in drafts. That I'll say that.
Yeah, I mean the second half K rate has me at least potentially hoping for more upside than I thought we were going to get from him because I kind of thought he'd sit in that 24% K rate, but if he has 30% K rate, possibility, which he showed at a couple of stops in the minors, but really like even in the minors he wasn't in that range. But if he's found something by just tossing the slider up there and making people hit that pitch, then there could be more upside than a lot of people are giving him. And in regards to all Cubs pitchers, you can get any of them for free. Nobody wants
It was
any of the Cubs arms.
last year he had the most Ks. Well, actually not the most, but he had Robbie Ray had the most Ks off of the slider by a lefty, and he was number two, right in front of Carlos Rodon. So I mean that's good company. Like
Yeah.
So if you see that and you're like, if he throws his slider, like his slider whiff percentage is up there with Edwin Diaz, RIP, and Spencer Strider last year. He was it was really good. Like his slider is really excellent. So if his slider is like, if he goes to the slider enough, that's
Yeah.
there's a possibility here for that's why I wrote the sleeper post. I was just glancing at the sleeper post while I was telling you those stats. Obviously. Yeah, it was the reason why I wrote the sleeper post to begin with. Like he could be really good. And he's free in drafts. Okay.
Yeah, his K per nine last year, Gray, in the second half, it was better than Garrett Cole. It was better than Aaron Nola, Brandon Woodruff, Shohei Ohtani, Justin Verlander, Luis Castillo. Like his K rate was as good as anybody's in the second half. So there's definitely a little bit of upside here if he just keeps chucking that slider up there and makes people go after that pitch. Number 77 is Hunter Brown. Last year, he had 20 innings in the majors. They were very good 20 innings. It was only 20 innings. In AAA, he went 9-4, 2.55 ERA, 108 WHIP, 134 strikeouts, and 106 innings. He projected for an 8.2 record, 3.41 ERA, 1.12 WHIP, 129 strikeouts, and 118 innings pitched. He is a 96 mile an hour fastball, cutter, curve, and his ADP is climbing fast, Gray.
I know. That's the funny thing is like I mentioned with Justin Steele, it's almost like people like to like guys who have less of a chance of throwing innings. So it's almost like they like the upside to be in the form of guys who you've seen less of. It's like, yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like this whole tier is guys I like. Like I like Hunter Brown. But we just rattled off all those Justin Steele stats, and Justin Steele's going like 80 picks after Hunter Brown. Like you can basically draft Hunter Brown, wait 3 rounds, and then draft Justin Steele if you want. Like you can have both of them. So yeah, I love Hunter Brown as well. I don't see necessarily the insane upside, I guess. That is why that's fueling his ADP. Like people are saying like he's this year's Christian Javier. Actually, I think I've even said that. Which, it's a cute narrative because of, the same team, and they both, he was number 5 for the Astros last year and Brown's going to be number 5 for him this year. So, I see the correlation. I get it. But, I don't know. I like Hunter Brown, so I don't want to sit here and be negative on him. I just think, there's the ADP is a little bit high for what people are actually getting, but it's fine. I would take the flyer because you take it on Hunter Brown, and like I said, you can turn around and take Justin Steele a little bit later, so that's fine.
Yeah, I have no problem with grabbing Hunter Brown, even with his climbing ADP. I see it there. If you can get a 27 to 30% K rate guy, anywhere in the draft. I mean, that's always nice. And I mean, at one point he was going really late, and you can get him for a steal, literally just a steal, ha ha. But now he's climbing. Now his recent ADP has been 198 versus 312 for steal. So you're right. You take Hunter Brown, you can wait 100 picks and then take Justin Steele, and kind of you make it the same kind of lines from both of them potentially. Number 78 is Runzi Contreras. Last year he went 5-5, 3.79 ERA, 1.27 WHIP, 86 strikeouts and 95 innings. You have projected for 7-10, 3.61 ERA, 1.24 WHIP, 139 strikeouts and 131 innings. 21% K rate, but has shown K rate upside in the minors at least. And I think that's where some of his hype is coming from, although he's nowhere near the hype that we were just talking about with Hunter Brown.
No, not at all. He's also going around like 300 overall.
Yeah.
I feel like I've said 15 pitchers are going at 300 overall.
I think they are though. I think it's all pitchers at that point.
Yeah, I mean it's
There's
like
no bats worth picking
incredibly, yeah. I mean incredibly, honestly, there are 5 pitchers. I'm looking at ADP right now, and there's 5 pitchers going at 296 or 297 overall. Like there's so many pitchers that they're just like all jammed together at that range. But yeah, Ronis Contreras. Anyway, Ronis Contreras is like he's going around Justin Steele, and way after Hunter Brown. But I mean, I get it. There's like, I think Ronis Contreras is like the shine's worn off a little bit, even though he's still like so young. I mean, he's only 23, and he has less than 100 innings in the major leagues. Like, I don't think we've seen the best of Ronis Contreras yet. He's like, I honestly, like, Ronis Contreras out pitch probably Edward Cabrera. I mean, it's like, Cabrera's been, Cabrera has the upside too. Like, I don't want to put down any of these guys because I like them all. Like, don't get me wrong, but Contreras has that crazy upside as well. We just haven't seen it yet. PNC is a good park. I mean, obviously, the Pirates aren't going to give him a ton of wins. Like he might win 5 games. He might go 5-20 with a 3.3 ERA and a 10 K per 9. But yeah, I mean he's good. He's still going to be. I think he's still good. I worry a little bit because the Pirates are so bad that nothing's off the table for how bad things could go because of how bad the Pirates coach their players. I mean, the Pirates, they had Garrett Cole being a pitch to contact guy. So nothing's off the table with the Pirates, but I do like Ronis Contreras.
Yeah, I don't know what happened with him when he went to the Pirates. All of a sudden, like the K rate ticked up. So there's a little bit of mystery in that for me where I don't know what the Pirates did with him. But yeah, you're right. There's definitely K rate upside here that he hasn't shown in the majors, but that doesn't necessarily mean that it can't happen. It was only 95 innings last year, so definitely still some room for potential growth. And I think you can, at his draft price, why not take the upside shot potentially? Number 79 is Trevor Rogers. I was so wrong on Rogers last year. Sorry, everybody. He went 4-11 last year. He had a 5.47 ERA, 1.50 WHIP, 106 strikeouts, and 107 innings. You're projected for 8-10, 3.72 ERA, 1.31 WHIP, 138 strikeouts, and 135 innings. So it seems like you have him coming, somewhat of a bounce back, but not fully back to where maybe we thought he might be coming into last year.
Yeah, no, I think he's probably somewhere in the middle of that, between, his breakout of 2021 and then last year, 2022. I think the K's could bounce back a little bit. I think the walks could come down. ERA's fickle, so we'll see what happens there. But he was a little bit unlucky last year with his insanely terrible ERA. He wasn't quite as bad as the numbers say last year, and he maybe wasn't as good as 2021 when I was telling people not to draft him last year. You might have been saying to draft him, but I was out on Rodgers last year. I'm back in a little bit, but only because the price is much cheaper now, and I'm fine with the flyer as a this is obviously these are six to seven to even eighth starters off the board for your fantasy team, and I'm fine with Trevor Rogers as like a seventh starter. as long as his elbow is better than Trevor Story.
Yeah, that would be good. I will say I'm a little bit back in on Trevor Rogers. As I mentioned, like last year, or I guess I didn't say this yet. He I couldn't have predicted he was going to change his slider and changeup for no reason at all after his breakup. He went with a more horizontal, less vertical pitch on both of them. That didn't work, obviously. He posted a terrible season. So far this spring, the movement numbers look a lot closer to what he was doing in 2021. So while I am not quite on the bandwagon like I was last year, coming off his breakout, I am back on as a late flyer in regards to, I think there's definitely some upside for him to bounce back and to get some of those Ks back as well. Number 80 is Michael Kopech. Last year he went 5-9, 3.54 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, 105 strikeouts on 119 innings. You own down for 10-7, 3.89 ERA, 1.23 WHIP, 133 strikeouts and 129 innings. Former top prospect Michael Kopech. We've been waiting for him to break out for, I don't know, 3 years, 4 years now. Is it going to come, Gray? Are we going to get the breakout, or is he going to kind of settle into a middle ground here?
I mean, I get why he's going so late in drafts, and there is he's going around 275 overall. I get it because like if you look at his numbers, and you're like, okay, so as a starter, he can't throw as hard as he was as a reliever, and his Ks aren't going to be good, and his command was a little off, but that was also his first year as a starter, and like, I mean, Kershaw wasn't good as his first year as a starter. I mean, like, there's like no room for error for people. Like, and people so quickly move on to the next shiny object. It's like, oh, Hunter Brown. Oh, he hasn't thrown at all in the majors. This sounds wonderful. Well, he threw about 20 innings, but I mean, you know what I mean? Like, and then you have Kopech, who's actually a bit stretched out and actually could throw 45 to 155 innings this year, and was a big time prospect. Like, Kopech could easily break out. Like, it's crazy to look at Kopech and be like, oh well, I guess he's a 7-ish K per 9 guy now. Like, what? Why? Like, he had 1 year as a starter. Maybe it doesn't completely come together this year, but I could totally see Kopech being like a top, keep, realistic expectations. I could see him being a top 40 starter this year. I mean, I could see it for sure. Does it happen? I don't know. But the price is cheap enough where you could take the flyer to find out easily. I mean, he's going so late. Like, it's like between, you're looking at like, him or like Garrett Whitlock. What is even Garrett Whitlock? I mean, where's Garrett Whitlock even? Is he a starter? Is he a reliever? Like, it's like, who would take, Garrett Whitlock instead of him? I don't know. Anyway, and I don't actually hate Garrett Whitlock for what it's worth. I mean, I do think there could be upside there, but Kopech is in the rotation, and he threw 120 innings last year. Like, you're gonna get like, at least in deeper leagues, you can't really go wrong with Kopech. In a shallower league, you can just draft him and then drop him if he's not good. So it doesn't matter.
Yeah, and honestly, even if the Ks don't kind of materialize like we think they might at some point, like, we're still talking about the same kind of numbers we were talking about with, Zach Eflin or Andrew Heaney, minus, potentially the Ks. Like, he's still in that range of production, even without a bump, and he's still young enough in his career. The bump can 100% still happen. I'm with you. I don't understand why he goes in, past 250 when there's still plenty to like about Michael Kopech. Like 3.54 ERA, 1.19 WHIP, and a 21% K rate over 140, 150 innings. You can do a lot worse than that. Number 81 is Reed Detmers. Last year he went 7-6, 3.77 ERA, 1.21 WHIP, 123 strikeouts, and 129 innings. I'm projected for a 9-10, 3.89 ERA, 1.26 WHIP, 143 strikeouts, and 142 innings. He went down to AAA in June, tightened up the slider, threw it with a little bit more velocity, and then the second half numbers looked a lot better when he came back through to a 3.36 ERA with a 25% K rate. I have a lot of Reed Detmer shares. Gray.
Yeah, and I believe either Cool Whip wrote a post about Reed Detmers, or he just loves him because he's an angel. No, he did.
Those are both true.
Yeah, those are both true. Yeah, he did write a sleeper. Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, I also like Reed Detmers. I mean, this whole tier is guys I like. With Reed Detmers, I think Reed Detmers actually is safer than a lot of the names that we mentioned. Like, he's actually a guy who I could see probably, there's probably a case to be made that Reed Detmers is more of a number 5 than a number 6. Like, number 6 is, you get riskier the deeper you go in drafts, obviously. And Reed Detmers is going at he's going as a number 5. So I have him ranked a little bit lower than ADP. So I have him ranked past where the point where I would probably draft him. So, I mean, like I've said before, I rank based on my own feelings. I don't look at ADP. So if Detmers is off the board by the time I'm ready to draft him, then, c'est la vie, but I do like Reed Detmers. Unfortunately, I'm just not sure if I'm going to be drafting him because I think he's going a little bit earlier than this.
Yeah, he is definitely going a little bit earlier than currently where you have him. Again, I have no issue with it. I understand why you might not go for it. I don't expect the whip to really ever get under control, but I think he can be ERA and a solid K guy. So again, I don't mind reaching for him a little bit. Gray, we are already at 2 hours. I know we wanted to try and get through 100. Kind of in the format we've been doing, but I'm going to start lumping guys together and let's try and move a little bit faster. 82 is Tyler Mahle, 83 Garrett Whitlock, 84 Bailey Ober, and 85 Josiah Gray. 86 is Domingo Germán. That rounds out this tier, and I feel like the kind of tie between them all is most of them should have a spot, and there is some upside here, but there's also some risk that all of them kind of bottom out.
Right. Yeah, no, completely. No, I agree. It's I mean it's like you're deep in, you're deep into the starters at this point. You're deep into the mucky muck. You may not get anything, but they're upside gambles. I mean, I like the I like the gamble on them. I don't know necessarily what you're going to get. Bailey Ober, for instance, is he may not even be in the rotation to start the year. Josiah Gray has shown flashes of being great, but he's also been really not good.
Yes, that's very true.
Yeah. Domingo Germán, I like Domingo Germán a lot, but Rodon is, favorable stuff is being said about Rodon, and he's supposed to be coming back in relatively soon. So, I don't know. Germán or Clark Schmidt, one of them's getting booted from the rotation. I think it's Germán. I think it's Schmidt who's going to get booted. But at a certain point, I think, it's Germán may not be able to throw the innings. So, but all these guys they're deep flyers. I like them though. I don't really have any issues with taking a flyer on any of these guys. But they are upside, throwing caution to the wind, or you're in a shallow league and you're just taking an upside gamble to see what happens. And after a start or two, you cut them for a streamer or something. So but they're good. I mean, I don't mind the upside gambles here.
Yep, totally with you. Moving on to our next tier, number 87, Tyler Anderson. He's moving to the other side of LA. Jose Quintana at 88, Ranger Suarez at 80. Sorry,
No,
Ranger Suarez.
Jose Quintana actually got he's out now because of a
Oh
stress
yeah,
fracture in a
he has
rib.
he's not pitched. Yeah. So number 88 is Ranger Suarez. Number 89 is Jameson Taillon. Number 90 is Taiwan Walker. 91 Steven Matz. 92 Kenta Maeda. I'll stop us within that group. Anything in specific you want to say about them?
Yeah, I mean, I think like these guys, I feel like their upside is like moving into like the Miles Mikolas, Merrill Kelly of tier type situation. I don't expect great things from Ranger Suarez, but he could possibly be like a poor man's like Merrill Kelly ish type. For like the guys and like the number fives that we were talking about earlier in the podcast, like that's where like Steven Matz, same sort of situation, Taiwan Walker, all these guys. Like you can like I don't see necessarily like huge upside. I don't see them like, making a leap into the top 40 starters unless like they get crazy lucky on their wins or something, but they're good. They're just really more floor. They're floor plays. They're plays about like it's like you won safety super late in drafts, and you're like, I don't really need another upside flyer because my entire team is upside flyers. So I'm going to take like, a Ranger Suarez or a Tyler Anderson and like, hope that they can stay on the field for 160 innings and be solid passable ratio bets.
Yep. No, that's pretty much the whole group. Nothing really to add there. 93 is Lance McCullers Jr. 94 is Frankie Montas. 94 is Adam Wainwright. I mean, McCullers, he's not going to start the season. Adam Wainwright has looked so bad so far this spring. And the numbers started to fall off last year with Wainwright. You want to talk about them real quick?
Yeah, I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. I think Wainwright, I think he might be cooked.
Yeah,
I think we might finally have gotten to the point where Wainwright is cooked. But props to him for making it this long. I didn't think he was going to last into his 40s. But yeah, he looks pretty cooked.
yeah, it looks bad. I thought he was cooked like years ago, but yes, I'm in agreement. I think it's completely over, and this is his last year under contract finally. So it's probably done. Number 95, you have Dre Jameson. 96, Mike Clevenger. 97, David Peterson. 98, Brian Bayo. 99, DL Hall. 100, Yuri Perez. 101, Braxton Garrett, and 102, Mackenzie Gore. 103, Jared Schuster, and I'll stop so we can talk about anybody in that group that you wanted to cover.
Yeah, I mean, God. So obviously, this is like, you're going from like no boring and no upside to guys who actually have upside and like, like David Peterson. I wrote a sleeper post on him, but I just never posted it because it looked like he wasn't going to be in the rotation. Like I love David Peterson. Like he's like we were talking earlier about Justin Steele and his slider. David Peterson's slider is just outrageously good. Bayo is like in the same situation of like all these guys like DL Hall, Yuri Perez, like Braxton Garrett, like these guys could be so good. Like these guys basically were like the guys who I couldn't squeeze in to the six starter tier of like Justin Steele and Edward Cabrera. Like these guys are like just a little bit too risky for me to put in that tier. But like DL Hall, for instance, like if he could throw as many innings as Grayson Rodriguez, I probably wouldn't be ranking DL Hall much later. Like DL Hall could be excellent. I just don't know when he's going to be in the rotation or if he's going to be in the rotation. I have no clue. Braxton Garrett, I'm insanely crazy about. I've drafted Braxton Garrett in quite a few places. I just drafted Jared Schuster earlier last week in I believe it was the Raz Slam. Like it's between him and Dylan Dodd for the Braves' fifth spot in the rotation, and we all know the fifth spot in the Braves' rotation is a top 10 starter. We know this. We're totally. I mean, come on, guys. Like, let's look at if past history is going to inform the future.
Yeah, I like. I actually kind of like both Schuster and Dodd. It just depends on who they give that nod to. I'm with you on Garrett as well. Number 103 is Cade Cavalli. 104 Ryan Nelson. 105.
Okay, Cade Cavalli, he's out with the Tommy John, so
Yep.
he's out of there.
105 Eduardo Rodriguez. Number 106 Kyle Gibson. 107 Sean Manaea. 108 Alex Wood. 109 Corey Kluber. 110 Jose Barrios.
Boo!
111 Johnny Cueto. 112 Kyle Bradish. 113 Clark Schmidt. 114 Aaron Savale. 115 Mitch Keller. I'll just stop there, Gray. This will be the last group I think we'll go through. Who did you want to talk about in this?
Okay, so Ryan Nelson is super interesting. Like Dre Jamison, one of them's going to be the fifth starter for the Diamondbacks. I think they both could be really like they could probably be like a top five or fifth to sixth starters for shallow, like a 12-team league. They're only being drafted in super deep leagues. Like Ryan Nelson and Dre Jamison aren't even being drafted in most mixed leagues or shallower mixed leagues at least. And they're not going until the end of like late rounds for a 15 team. They could be excellent. Sean Manaea. So here's the thing with Sean Manaea. I didn't want any part of him back when I wrote the rankings in like November, December of last year. But now that we're in the spring and Manaea's, he went to Driveline, which is not in itself. It doesn't mean in itself it's a great thing. It's neither here nor there. But in spring, his velocity is up. And even if you see what I wrote back in like November of last year for Manaea, he lost his velocity last year. So that was the problem. If that velocity back, I'm super interested in Manaea. I've drafted him in a bunch of leagues. I want to say like just about all my leagues I can get Manaea for like, crazy cheap. I've been drafting them. And then who else? Bradish is actually pretty interesting. Like I could see Bradish like last year I said Nestor Cortez could like he could make a huge jump. Like I ranked Nestor Cortez like super late, like around 120 overall for starters, and I said he could make a huge jump to next year rankings. And Kyle Bradish, I feel kind of similar about this year. Like I think Kyle Bradish could be he may not be like. He may not be an ace like Nestor Cortez was, but he could honestly. Kyle Bradish is one of those guys where I feel like everything is lined up for him to be like a top 50 starter next year. Like I could see him taking the leap to at least like Brady Singer type area of the draft. Like Kyle Bradish feels like he's going to be a guy who's not going to be cheap next year. And then Clark Schmidt's kind of interesting for like April to May, depending on what the deal is with Rodon, but I'm not as hyped. Like some people are much more hyped on Clark Schmidt. I like him. I just don't think he's going to have the innings. Like I think he's going to be a middle reliever by like June.
Yeah, that's possible. I'm kind of in on the Clark Schmidt again. You can get him for next to nothing. He's going to last round of draft type of area. I mean, he's put up good ratios. He's shown the ability to get strikeouts in the past. He's messing around with a cutter this spring, so maybe that adjusts his pitch mix and gives him another option. So I don't mind taking the shot, but it is one where like if it doesn't work out, I'm not hanging on to him like I am with some of the other top prospects that we've talked about. It's a draft and see how it goes, and if he even holds on to his rotation spot. I guess the other one I wanted to mention real quick before we get out of here is Mitch Keller. His second half ERA was 3.09. He had a 20 0.5 K rate, better vertical drop across the board once he came back to the majors. So I'm somewhat interested in Mitch Keller. He's kind of one of those last round dollar guys for me that I don't mind grabbing.
Is this a 2.5 hour podcast?
Yep, 2 hours 15. Jose Barrios, he went from the most break on his pitchers ever in 2021 to the least amount in 2022. So far this spring, it's closer to 2022. Gray, that's it. We're done. Let's get out of here.
This is the longest podcast ever.
Hey, we got to get through all of them. We got to get through 100 pitchers. We've done it. We got through 115, Gray. That's as good as we're going to do, I think.
Oh my God. I was wondering why I was losing my voice.
Yep, that's why.
Wow, this is like a Dan Carlin podcast. Holy crap, this is insane. Okay.
Energizer Bunny style. But we're finally done, Gray. I'll talk to you next week when we get on to some of the actual news and drafting stuff and all that stuff.
All right, Lades.
That's it.